Hello, welcome to New Life Ranch. My name is MC.
And I'm Johnny.
And we are part of the adventure education team here at New Life Ranch. And today we will be exploring habitats and wildlife here on our very own trails at the ranch. And leading us today is our friend Mr. Skip, who will be sharing his knowledge with us and being our guide.
We're going to be going on a nature hike, but it's not just a nature hike. When you go out here, this is the biggest and best classroom in the world for nature. We're going to look at things. This is early spring fair. This is first week of April, and there are going to be lots of new things that are coming in that we won't see later on in the summer. We're going to start here. We'll go up to Goldfish Pond, and then we'll see where we go from there. So, if you're ready, let's go. Right here we have some ferns, and we'll see lots of ferns along here. But the neat thing about this particular fern is it looks kind of puny right now, but it's young. And these little curlies right here, if you can focus in on that, these little curlies are edible. You don't want to eat a whole bunch of them. You might want to mix them with other stuff. But you could take one off. They look like a little curly caterpillar, so make sure that you get the fern and not a caterpillar. And if you want, go ahead and take one and taste it. They are edible. You can put them in salad or, yeah.
It's actually good.
Kind of a neat little flavor. Mm-hmm. You all right?
It's like chalky.
Spit it out if you'd like. Nobody's looking. And there's so much edible out here that you hear about people being in the woods and they find them nearly starved to death. You're not going to get a lot of bulk with this, but there are a lot of vitamins and minerals in all the plants out here, enough that it will keep you alive. We're going to look at this little purple flower right here. I just about didn't recognize it. Bethany pointed it out to me. Usually when these grow, they grow up and then they go right back down again, like this one right here, and then that's how they grow. I don't usually see them going straight up, but they usually have a little funny right angle like this one does. But these little purplies, they look like a clover, only the leaf itself is heart-shaped. See how it's heart-shaped? And you kind of rub them on. They're kind of hairy, but they have a little lemony flavor to them. Have a look. You want one? Go ahead and pick it if you want. They have a little lemony, sour taste to them. You okay?
Yeah.
You're having trouble with my diet, aren't you?
It's taking some adjusting.
It's kind of neat.
Can you swallow it?
You can. Yeah, it has a little.
Do you think it's high in fiber?
It is. I don't know if it's high in fiber. It's good in potassium, but notice underneath how the leaf is just beautifully purple.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. But all of it, they're not always this purple. There are some that they just don't have that bright purple color. Right here, this is a grapevine, and in the fall, later on, late summer, there are grapes up there, but the amount of energy it would take to get to them would not be sufficient enough to make it worth the climb. It starts right down here, curls up right here, comes up around, does the hokey pokey, turns itself around, then goes way up there and dissipates, just disappears into the tree. It is a good survival source of water. And if you ever need water in an emergency situation, a good place to cut would be like right down there somewhere. and make a good notch, and you will get plenty of water. It's perfectly clear, drinkable, and it's good. Not necessarily good for you, but it's good. It's water. I mean, it's water. This plant, there's a lot of these plants around here. It's a type of a holly. These leaves are very, very sharp. They're what's called a succulent. They're very thick. They, if you can hear this, it sounds almost like a little piece of leather. And it has berries on it. I have to be careful because I'll show you some berries on top.
Spider too.
Ouch, and a spider. And they turn, you can see some of them are starting to turn purplish. They get a pretty purple. But in the spring, the new growth from here to here is last year's growth. When we get new growth, they're really soft and pliable, and you can actually touch them without getting poked. But these are a year old now, and they have a lot of water in them. Now, if you ever needed water, this would not be a good idea to get water, because you'd have to eat way too many of them, plus the fact you'd probably poke yourself. But little animals chew on the leaves and they get moisture from them. I call this log Johann Sebastian Log, and I asked them why, and then I named different Johann Sebastian Bach and Beethoven and G.F. Handel, and I asked who they are, if they know, and some of the kids say they're composers. I said, okay. I said, the reason I call this Johann Sebastian Log is because he's decomposing. This type creek or stream where we have water and then we don't have water is called intermittent. Intermittent stream. That means it's kind of there and kind of not, kind of there, kind of not. It just happens every once in a while. But apparently because of a lot of the rain we've had, this is not, especially right here, this is usually somewhat dry. We are now at Goldfish Pond, and surprisingly there's more water in here. I'm again surprised because we had so much water downstream. But right here at one time, this was the water supply, the gray water supply for the camp. They would probably use it for maybe flushing the toilets and things like that. But they wouldn't drink it. They would have to bring in their own water. But the neat thing about this is at one time there were goldfish in here. Now, when I usually lead a hike, I asked, what are the possibilities that would cause the absence of goldfish? Why are there no goldfish in here?
Predators.
Predators? Predators is usually the first answer. And I point out there's a place, a little hole right behind, on the other side of us, about 10 feet up from the bank. There's a hole there, and I don't know if it's a den of some kind, but I don't know if it's still alive anymore. And then behind us used to be a hole that at one time was a den right here. I hope I'm not uncovering something, but anyway, it looks like it's not. There's no not habitated. That's not the word, right? Habitate. Say it again. Inhabited. Okay, there's nothing living in there right now. It's pretty plugged up. But anyway, it could have been a place where scavengers, predators could have lived. The reason there aren't any goldfish in here is because of several years ago, there were several tornadoes that came through here. And as the tornadoes came through here, pulled up several trees, And when that happened, it ruined the canopy of this forest. When the canopy was ruined, birds would fly over and look down, and they would see, fish and chips. Well, without the chips anyway. But they'd go down and eat the fish. So predators was probably the right intelligent guess. This is called a root ball. A root ball. During the tornado, this big tree here was blown over that way, and it pulled up the root system with it. You can see part of the tree right here, and this is just a small part of it. But if you're ever in a situation and you need a shelter, clean out the debris, and then take some of these larger posts and put across, and then take smaller ones and fill in the gaps, and then take smaller ones and fill in the gaps again. And then take some of this moss and fill in the cracks as much as possible, and then take some leaves and put more moss on top of it. Then in the winter time, when it's cold, fill this with the leaves as much as you can, and then you can crawl inside here and stay warm. Found some May apples. Well, plants anyway. This is called a May apple. Sometimes they grow in a single stem, and sometimes they grow in a single stem and then separate. Inside that little separation, little fork, is usually a fruit. Give you an example. Yeah, see how this, okay, I'm going to turn this. See how it comes up and it forks. And then right out of the fork comes this little plant. And this little plant is a flower. I'll turn it so you can see it. And then the flower, like everything else, will turn into a fruit. The fruit is actually edible. So that's the only one I've found that without going way out. But anyway, learn to recognize this May apple. They're really pretty. Here's some poison ivy. Starts down here. Notice the hairy legs. Now there are other plants that have hairy legs, hairy stems. But if you'll notice, leaves of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, each one of those is called a leaflet. A leaflet. And so from the stem up is called the leaf, and from each one of those is called the leaflet. So this is poison ivy. If someone were to ask me what's the difference between poison oak and poison ivy is just that, ivy, and it grows around trees. Poison oak grows like a tree, and we'll see some poison oak. This tree right here goes back. It goes back, and if you can get close to the edge of the trunk and zero in and check out the fuzzy legs on that trunk. This is poison oak. So whenever you see a tree like this, check out to see if it doesn't have a hairy legs, a hairy trunk before you even try to touch it. So if you're in this area, you don't ever want to pick something up because of the fact you could be picking up a piece of poison oak. This particular, remember we saw that big old creepy vine. This is Virginia creeper. They're not poisonous. You can touch them, but you also notice they have little hairy vines too. So you want to be careful when you see things. You want to make sure you know what they are. Well, the Virginia creeper has 5 leaves, 5 leaflets. As the poison ivy has 3 leaflets. And then right here we have some grapevines. Grapevines travel. It's amazing how they travel, but then these little things, as they get higher and higher, these are called tendrils, and they'll wrap. Notice they're spirals, and they'll spiral wrap themselves around whatever they're climbing, and then that gives them more stability, and they just keep climbing and growing and climbing and growing, hanging on with these little tendrils. This is really cool. It's like a sticky weed. It's not sticky, but a stickweed. She threw it at me, and it'll stick kind of like a little Velcro. Oh, good catch, Johnny.
Thanks.
All right, way to go. Stickweed.
Oh.
A lot of times a beaver will come around to start processing the tree. And he'll start by going around the tree, and then that in turn actually kills it because it doesn't have the bark protection. And then this has a neat corky type bark, but looks like the beavers got a hold of it, and they've actually gone all the way around that. So they had some plans for it. Probably they're going to cut it down and pull it into the water. They'll cut it apart, pull it into the water. Maybe somewhere downriver they'll make either beaver dam or beaver den. Here's another nice one right here. So notice how the bark is gone from here. So obviously he had this one cleared out. He had this one targeted. He knew what he, or she knew what he was doing. More than likely it was a he. Okay, what he's doing here, he starts chewing, and he didn't have to do too much to this one. Apparently this one might have been leaning out far enough where all he knew is he had to just make enough here so that the tree would fall naturally into the water. But he starts just chewing and making this big notch, and eventually it weakens and falls into the water. But they are such great craftsmen that they can fell a tree in any direction they really want.
Thank you so much, Mr. Skip, for coming with us today and teaching us so many things about all of the plants and wildlife here at New Life Ranch. Thank you guys for coming along with us. And now afterwards, if you would like, there's an activity to go along with our hike in the comment box below. Thank you.
Great.